Lopez is in the virtual lead on GC. His teammate attacks him, pulls another GC contender whilst Lopez desperately chases behind. Some of the worst tactics in cycling I have ever seen. Part 3, Vuelta Andalucia Stage 4, the hardest climb of the race. Perche, 7Ks, 9%, right out of the gate, and then rolling medium mountain afterwards. Alessandro Covi and UAE hoping they could keep it together. It was before live coverage, and then when that started with 60Ks to go, we saw he couldn't. There was a group of 14 riders, the big guns up front, whilst UAE and Covi, they only started this race with 5 riders, were pacing behind with Trentin and Poels. Kras and Clark had missed that move as well, but this front group, 2.5 minutes ahead, had Carlos Rodriguez of Ineos on 10 seconds, Haig on 10 seconds, Christian Rodriguez of Total on 10 seconds. Further back in the group was Simon Philip Yates on about 19 seconds, Sosa on 10 seconds. Landa's out of the GC picture, he'll be here as a domestique. And while Poels, another option for Bahrain, he's on 16 seconds, Lutsenko's on 40 seconds, and O'Connor is on 19 seconds. So very small gaps. The virtual leader at this point, pretend he's in the jersey for the rest of this video, Miguel Angel Lopez, number 1 on Astana, 2 seconds ahead of the Haig, Rodriguez, Sosa collection of riders. So Astana had 3, Tejada, Lutsenko, Lopez in the group. Tejada pretty close. Caruso trying to say something funny to Jack Haig. Jack Haig says, "I don't have time for it, Damiano." About to blow this race apart. Bahrain have 4 riders, 2 of whom were very close on GC. So they have options, but they're behind Lopez. And once we saw the group behind pacing with Monaco and then Covi himself with 48Ks to go, we knew this was done for Covi, but he'd had a good 3 days beforehand. It's all about this front group. So when were Bahrain going to attack? What were they going to do? In what order were they going to launch riders? They have Caruso there, 4 minutes behind GC, not really a threat. He attacks first, a bait move, and Miguel Angel Lopez closes it. Caruso's 4 minutes behind on GC. Now, I can forgive it, like maybe he just saw a flash of red go past him. He didn't really see, like, Caruso, Poels, and Haig are all tall guys, and by the time he's on the wheel, he's soft pedaling at this point anyway. So not a massive deal. Just curious that where's Tejada? Where's Lutsenko, who should be closing? Pretend he's in the leader's jersey. They should be keeping this together. And Lopez is looking for Tejada, like, move up. Like, come to the front, keep this together. We've got this rolling run into the finish. I'm only 2 seconds ahead. Luckily, for him at least, there's no bonus seconds available at the finish. Next thing we see, no one's really helping them pace. And Lutsenko on the guardrail isn't contributing to the pacing for Miguel Angel Lopez at all, despite having good legs, despite being 40 seconds back on GC, and he actually attacks with 19.4 Ks to go on this. There's a lot of these little highway rises for the rest of this race, really tough on the riders who'd had a tough stage beforehand. Caruso pulls through with Lutsenko. O'Connor's there as well, 19 seconds before Caruso realizes I shouldn't pull when I'm bringing O'Connor ahead on GC in front of my teammates. And then it's actually Simon Yates, who looks really sprightly in this race. I think him and Lopez, they look the best uphill, possibly Lopez the best. Like, he gaps this group, but it's for nothing. 18 Ks to go because Caruso's sitting on. Lutsenko's not really going to work with Yates too much, and even though he tries again, Christian Rodriguez bridges across, and it's actually Miguel Angel Lopez bridging himself across the Lutsenko group. The second effort he's had to done in these series of attacks before, because something's going to snap. Someone's going to get away, and if you're in the virtual leaders jersey, you want it to be the right rider. Sosa's struggling, and Lutsenko, 100 meters after Lopez had closed that group, instead of pacing at the front, attacks again. Now, if Lutsenko gets away solo, absolutely fine, go for the stage win. Not ideal for Lopez, but he's marked by Wout Poels. So Caruso had marked him first. Haig is always in the wheels here, watching Lopez and the other guys on like 10 seconds on GC, and he's got Poels who's 6 or 8 seconds, he's 6 seconds behind Haig, 8 seconds behind Lopez, gets across to Lutsenko, and Lutsenko's like, hey, would you like me to pull you to the finish and put you above Lopez, my teammate on GC? And Poels says, absolutely, that sounds fantastic. And they start to swap turns, 50-50, and now in the group behind, there's only riders who don't have teammates who aren't represented in the front group. Astana and Bahrain have guys in the group ahead, and Lopez initially is like, oh, well, I have a teammate ahead, I shouldn't chase. even though that is really screwing me over right now. Lutsenko pulling turns with Poels. Simon Yates, as you see, that there's discord in the group behind, because people who don't have a teammate, they're like, oh, well, you're ahead on GC by 8 seconds. Why should I pull? Christian Rodriguez, I'm pretty sure he's just going for third on GC at Andalucia. So if two guys get away, he's not too fast. And Lutsenko's a fair way back on GC as well. So the gap goes out to about 30 seconds pretty quickly, whilst that group is not really cooperating behind. O'Connor tries so many times in this stage, and this is what O'Connor does. He can get over long alpine or big HC climbs. Mary van Sevenant loves the high normalized power for maybe not too much reward, and then O'Connor, can re-attack on a descent multiple times, like in Tour of the Alps when he won that big stage out of Froome and co, or in the Dauphiné last year when he got away from the group on stage 8, the stage Padun one. And once again he tries, and it's actually, instead of Tejada, because Lopez is now getting a bit isolated in this group behind, it's Lopez closing down O'Connor. Now, I don't know if this was to try and stop Lutsenko being closed by O'Connor or more protecting his own GC. I think the latter, because O'Connor's only 11 seconds behind. Tejada drops, and now this is where it starts to get really dicey for Lopez, whilst Lutsenko is still pacing ahead, because he's now got no teammates left in the group behind. Lutsenko's taking Poels ahead of him on GC, and so Lopez, after he closes O'Connor down, is like, this has not been a pleasure so far, gentlemen. I'm going to close down Lutsenko, and he's already, there seems to be, to me, some trouble in leadership allocation, or at least Lutsenko riding for him in Andalucia after he transferred from Movistar after the big blow up in the Vuelta of España last year between him and Mars and the whole management there. But still, even at this point, we're not yet at worst cycling tactics I have ever seen part 3 title status, because if Lutsenko starts to just sit on Poels at this point and the group works a little bit better behind, that gap will come down very quickly, and that will improve Lutsenko's chances for the stage win. And maybe he dialed it back a little bit, but even in the last 1500 meters, Lutsenko was offering pulls to Poels whilst that gap was at 25 seconds. And Poels is in virtual GC lead now. He's overtaken the 8 seconds on Lutsenko's teammate Lopez. And now we're into, yes, Lutsenko finesses in the last 400 meters behind Wout Poels. But Poels has got a sneaky fast sprint. If you remember the KOM sprints in the Tour de France last year ahead of Wout van Aert, who's not too shabby in a sprint, and Mike Woods as well. Now, I know they're uphill, but he's won the Age before, and I think he's a sneaky fast sprinter. And Lutsenko has been changing turns with him to his own teammates' detriment for the previous 15 kilometers, sits in his draft eventually in the final sprint, but can't come out of his wheel and even draw level with his hip, while Poels, who was out of contract like Clark, like Pozzovivo at the end of last year, wins Vuelta Andalucia Stage 4 with his last win nearly 3 years ago at the Dauphiné, goes into the GC lead, and the story gets even better because on Twitter, straight after the stage, from Lopez's official Twitter account, he tweeted, "What a day, team," and then the internet just started clowning it, and it got deleted. So I don't know who posted that on his Twitter, but absolute scenes from Astana in this stage. The group came in 18 seconds behind. Poels can't believe it. Feel bad for Covi. Trentin and Palance tried their best for him, but Poels takes the stage. No gaps really between the rest of the top GC contenders. Pozzovivo, Clark and Kras lost a lot today, but Poels goes into the leader's jersey 10 seconds ahead of Lopez, and then there's a collection of Haig, Rodriguez, Sosa and Rodriguez of Ineos on 12 seconds. Yates further behind on 21 seconds. Now, there might be a redemption story tomorrow. If Lutsenko and Astana can light this stage up tomorrow, which is a medium mountain stage, it's not that hard, it's a 15-minute climb, steady gradient finish, perhaps Lopez can take the 10 seconds back on Poels, but there's no bonus seconds at the finish, and Bahrain have the strongest all-around team, so Lutsenko's made the work pretty hard for Lopez to take back the leader's jersey. I can't wait to see what happens tomorrow. Hope you enjoyed the video. Like it down below. Ciao.